morning, and thank you for joining us. This is Sunrise, and I am Alero Edu.
I'm Ayo Makinde. Good morning, and welcome to the program.
Well, I think it is apt for us to start with our commiserations, our condolences go to those who lost relatives and loved ones in that building collapse in Ikoyi.
It's, of course, as you would expect, as you know, it's something we've discussed over and over again, here and there. The question, well, there are a lot more questions than answers.
Definitely.
No doubt about that.
Definitely.
You know, so the only thing we can say is just hope and pray that one way or the other we're able to resolve the issues, because so many things have been, said, so many issues have been raised, have been casualties, unfortunately, but do the issues that have been raised, do they answer the questions, the myriad of questions that are there that are still in the air? You know, there is an NGO of sorts called Building Collapse Prevention Guild or something like that. And they have made so many recommendations to governments at all levels over the years, trying to ensure that this kind of thing doesn't happen. And they've been around for quite a number of years. They do not have any executive powers. They would only make recommendations. The question is,
Indeed. Indeed.
how far so far? So far, I mean, we've mentioned the Lagos State Building Control Agency.
Yeah.
But then the number of people are also asking, because so many people have pointed at the materials used. So what's the role that the Lagos Material Testing Laboratory supposed to have played?
Yeah, but that would mean positioning someone there almost permanently to check the composition of their mixture almost every day of the week.
Maybe not permanently, at least on a regular visit, regular, supervision.
Yeah, which means that when you're not there, we can cut corners.
Well, that's true, but at least let there be a will. Let there be a will. There's something that former governor of Lagos and Minister of Works and Housing, Fashola, said about the thing. Look, all the regulations are there, but will the people do the right thing? I mean, we know how risky it is to cut corners.
Yeah.
It's lives of people that we're talking about here. Why cut corners? Well, people are going to live there. It's like you're using fake materials to make a very, very fast car.
Especially in a place like Ikoyi. I'm sure those who have, made investments in that property believed that everything was okay. Yeah. I mean, when you hear Ikoyi, of course, you expect there to be high standards and
Absolutely.
all that. And reports have it that some of those flats were sold for about $1 million.
Well, the asking price, or at least the price on the receipt, so to speak, the flyers making the rounds of $1.5 million for each of those apartments. Yeah, so that's the asking price, if that is something like that, but
you do expect a certain level of
most
quality.
Certainly. I mean, there are people pay attention to just the one that collapsed. There are 3 of them. It's a three building infrastructure.
So the other 2 are going to go through a lot of scrutiny
exactly. Now. The other 2 are standing strong.
Yeah.
And it's not only those 2 that are going to go through a lot of scrutiny. If you listen to the deputy governor
any high rise,
it says the whole of Gerald Road is going to go through acidic testing or something like that, just to ensure the integrity of the land, is still as solid as promised. So,
yeah.
But that we can speak for that, and many people have spoken about the people whose lives have been lost. But what are we doing, or what are we going to do to ensure that we don't fall into this same quagmire again?
Yes.
We don't talk. Nobody talks about the workers at these sites.
Anyway, my dear, keep your gunpowder dry. Okay. This is one of the topics we're going to discuss in detail in the course of the program.
Why didn't I think of that?
Okay. Now, COP26. Now, what caught me, all kinds of things were discussed, of course, but what caught me was the commitment to move away from the use of coal. I can't remember by what year, but when I saw that, I just smiled and I said, I think about 30 nations or so have signed up you know, into that commitment. And I'm thinking, ooh, was Nigeria in that number?
Was it a commitment or a suggestion? Just asking.
No, not a suggestion. It was a commitment.
Okay.
It was a commitment.
You know,
So right now, we can't cook with gas, it would appear. The poor man cooks with coal and kerosene. Now we're committing, I'm not sure we've committed though. If we commit to moving from coal in the near future, what will they cook with?
Air dry, air fry. What? Sorry, I'm sorry. You know, the
Electricity.
The issue you have raised, I don't think many people are aware of how severe it is. That is the truth. Earlier, I mean, many men who are what we call breadwinners will know how much, when your wife comes and says, look, I was getting 200,000, as if you're getting up to that, a month before now, or I was getting 50,000. Now everything has risen by 100%.
Yep.
Consequently, intake, well, whatever it is that you give me is going to have to increase by 100%. Meanwhile, your salary hasn't increased.
Stagnant.
Your profit margin hasn't increased. If anything, you haven't even been able to increase the salaries of your staff. You can't even, you know, so many things, you know, to go with that. I think there is a need to look at a number of balances. There are so many issues at home. And look, this COP26, one thing, interview we had last week with the Deputy High Commissioner of Britain in Nigeria, British Deputy High Commissioner, said one of the questions that were put to him, look, per continent, the issues are peculiar.
Yeah.
Africa, even more peculiar. Because if we take whatever decisions we take, whatever commitments we make, which country is going to take a decision or make a commitment that will not help the economy or of its people?
Of its people.
The microeconomic considerations, the macroeconomic considerations of the people. I think those things are very important to consider. We are talking about Africa being an underdeveloped or developing continent, so to speak.
Yeah.
How significant is the decision that has been, well, the commitment? No. First of all, the decision. How significant is it to the economic well-being of Africa? Is it going to make Africa more dependent on the West? Or is it going to give Africa more a reason to, what's the word now? Looking words, to look at other opportunities. A lot of things that, and then one thing critically about COP26, the climate change agenda altogether, the Paris Agreement, is communicating it to people. Because even if the people who go attend these, COP meetings are able to understand what is being said, the people
Back home,
the policy executors,
yes,
do they understand?
Well, I can tell you for free that not many people in Nigeria would understand if you spoke to them about climate change, global warming. What's in be that? You know, but
We'll
if
bring
they
it home.
see that there are more floods, for instance,
Yeah.
it's getting hotter and hotter every year.
Yeah.
Like I always say, when I was growing up in Hamilton, you shut all the windows, shut all the doors, and you still used a blanket. But now, there's hardly any harmattan in Lagos.
But that's,
if you're lucky, you get 4 days, 10 days.
I think you should bring it home. It's from September of any year.
Normally.
Yeah, until like maybe January, February.
This is November.
It's still so hot, all over the place. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of floods, deforestation. Was that one that happens in the north when the encroachment, the desert
encroachment,
and all those things? Those are all signs of global warming. We need to find a way to communicate these things to our people in a way that they will understand.
Yes, orientation agency. If you're going to be telling us why we should stop cooking with coal, you've got your work cut out, and you have to explain to us exactly what global warming means. I understand He understands. But the woman in my village, for instance, whom you are telling to stop using coal, you need to explain it very well to her so that she understands the danger of continuing to cook with coal.
Well, I understand that we're supposed to take on the menu now.
Okay.
Just to quickly mention that the CBN printed 2.5 billion naira notes worth 1.1 or so trillion naira,
yeah,
with 56 point something
billion
naira. And the question that came to my mind was, what's the role of NSPMC?
The National Printing...
National Security Printing and Minting Company? Question mark, right?
Like they say in Lagos, ASCO.
Uh-oh.
Okay. So we're going to open by looking at the building collapse in Lagos.
That's the first one. Of course, you know the Anambra governorship election is already underway. We've been covering that for you. We'll take a step further on that.
And then we'll go to Ogun State and look at the Ogun land amnesty offer.
What does that mean? We'll have someone in the studio to tell us about that. Of course, we mentioned hike. We mentioned cooking gas. Well, there's hike in cooking gas price. Why?
And then, as is usual on Sunrise, we'll close with the Artist of the Week segment. And I bet you would like to meet this guest of ours today.
A him or a shim?
He is a he. That's all I'm saying. And he's a very interesting he. He's been a barber, he's been a tailor.
The cat is already sneaking out.
No, he's not sneaking out.
The cat is already sneaking out.
We're talking about Ayo.
Oh, me?
Maybe you have been a barber before, you have been...
You didn't say maybe.
Maybe. Well, he's going to take his cocoa now, so we'll see you in just a moment. Now, let's begin on this, well, it's been sad news for a week now or so, because this thing happened on Monday, the 1st of November, and we've had a very somber week as a result of it, when that 21-story building on Gerrard Road collapsed. Well, as of last night, we hear that 38 bodies have been recovered, while 9 people were rescued alive. So the Lagos State government has inaugurated a panel to look into the causes of that collapse. But we, on our part, we're going to also put in our 2 bits with our panelists. We have 2 engineers with us, a structural engineer, Jibola Tijani, as well as a design technologist, Mordecai Uzosike. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for the invite.
Now, that sad incident, Mr. Tijani, I wouldn't expect to put down $1 million to buy an apartment and watch it just crumble. What things do you think may have contributed to that building just crumbling down like that?
Thank you, and let me start by first sending out my condolences to the families and friends of those who lost their precious lives in that unfortunate incident. It is avoidable. It shouldn't have happened. And I hope and I believe the panel of inquiry set up by the governor will unravel what actually went wrong. Something really went wrong. And when you look at building, it's like a human body that consists of several parts. When one of the parts is faulty, is defective, the others will suffer as well. You can divide that into 2 when it comes to building: the human factor and nature. But in this environment, you always rule out nature. We are so lucky we don't have anything like seismic or earthquake over here. Then we don't have that gust that could probably affect the building that much. So it's always about human error. Building itself is a system, and it starts from conception. You have the client who call an architect to come and translate the idea or the thought that, oh, I want something. The architect comes in, he brings in the structural engineers to look at the design. Is this constructible? So the structural engineer does his own work and return back to the architect, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that, and then you are good to go. Then you go to the government to alert them that we are planning to do something, we need your permission, and you bring in other stakeholders. So in doing that, if people comply with the regulations that you have to submit this document, that document, and the construction itself is well supervised, I don't think a building that is not in existence, as in that's been completed, a building that is still under construction should suffer that fate. I think something really went wrong.
Mr. Ososiki, there's a question that I've been asking and I do not have a satisfactory answer yet. If you look at the pictures of the collapse, the building that collapsed, the unfortunate description that always comes to my mind is that of a pack of sliced bread. Now that tells me one thing. The slabs, the decks, seem to be very well made. It's only the pillars, the columns, and all of that. The pavement, I don't know what you call it, the decks.
No, the slabs.
The slabs, thank you. They were all well made, so well made that all through, every single one of them just seemed to collapse just like that. I don't even know how to put it to a question right now because, I mean, it's still befuddling for me. What was missing in the, was it okay? I mean, he has spoken to the likelihood of things that went wrong. Was it a design error, a structure error, material error? Because these three are human errors.
Mr. Ayo, up to now, have not gotten over the shock of that very incident. Because as a design technologist, that's the field I play in. I wonder what it will look like going out for my day's job, only for my family to have me as a headline news. I have kids still growing up. I can't even imagine. I commend my dear brother, fellow panelist, my engineer, who took time out to commiserate with the families of the bereaved. I'm also adding the survivors, whose traumatic experience will leave them with a lifetime of experience. Some of them may not get back from the post-traumatic stress of this very incident. In actuality, we've gone through this for so many times. I want to massage the ego of some people who felt Nigeria is doing well by saying that Nigeria is not in isolation with regards to this. Admittedly. But the question is, why is the whole world looking at us as, is their family problem? Because there's a track record. There's a track record of compromises. And people have spoken in times past. We had passionate Nigerians, very patriotic Nigerians, who have actually voiced out their concerns as regards the future of this country. The likes of Fela Anikulapo Kuti, the erudite, legal luminary, Gani Fayemi, Idris Abdulkarim, African China, Babatunde Raji Fashola, a host of them whom time will fail me to mention. They have actually expressed concern as the way this country is moving. But permit me to diverge a bit, because I am actually trained on the maxim, creativity, technology in a cultural context. And HSBC will say, never underestimate cultural knowledge. So I don't want to actually go into information that is in public domain. You can see on Google, there are fantastic articles that have been written on building collapse, even with Nigeria as a case study. But I want to focus on the cultural, indigenous problems that are contemporary to us currently.
And contributes to building collapse.
Absolutely. One, on my list, I'm articulating them in 3 different categories. The first has to do with the economy. The second has to do with government bottleneck. And the third is where all of us are culpable of. The demonic, manipulative tendency that is gaining ascendancy in this country. We all connived at it, and we are paying the ultimate price for it. Insecurity and the likes, they're all connected to it. It's systemic and foundational as well. Now, going back to that economy, you might ask, okay, what does economy have to do with building collapse? I will explain to you. In 2015 to 2016, I almost lost my last child. I was taking her to hospital as an outpatient. She was being taken care of, and she wasn't getting better. That dent of godly wisdom just came into my brain. And I told the doctor, can you please verify the dosage of these drugs that are being administered? And when he took it, fortunately, it's a hospital that has a bit of standard. When he took the drugs to the lab, I will shock you with this information. A drug that is meant to be 250 milligrams was about 125 or less. When I came out from that experience, what the doctor, immediately he came out from the lab, he said, Mr. Mordecai, we are finished in this country. The doctor, I'm saying, is still alive till today. He now told me, I'm going to stop every dosage of these pharmaceutical products, locally sourced. I'm going to use from the bank of the hospital, the imported drugs. They are quite expensive, but please, give me that guarantee that you will actually indemnify the organization for whatever administration that was made. And I obliged. With every passing administration, this child got better. When I now left the hospital, I'm talking to you now, I have 2 ladies, close family friends, that lost their children as a result of that very experience. One of them, she hasn't gotten past the trauma of losing the last but one child. About then was 11 years. And that child was in the heart of the mother.
Can you relate this to the, story that you told?
Now, in the building industry, Mr. Ayo, you can send out investigative journalists, go to our building markets. You will see a rod that is categorized to be 12 mm rod. Put your micrometer screw gauge to it. You'll be having 10.8 or 11.2 millimeters.
How significant is that?
Yeah, if a structural engineer is working, my fellow panelists will even expatiate more on that. If a structural engineer is working on a calculation of 12 millimeter size of rod embedded in a concrete, and now you are giving him, you might look at that as minute, but spread it across the quantity of iron rods that will be used for the entire building. Again, I talked about the pharmaceutical industry, the cement as well. Who is checking the quality of the cement that we are using? Because these are businessmen. They want to succeed. So when you go to the market today, your raw materials are all imported. You now have a material today at the exchange rate for 580. In 3 days' time, is 590. In 5 days' time, is 612. How does it break even?
Okay. Well, there's a lot that you're packed there. Well, we have the third, panelist that I think we should bring on just before now. But let's go ahead. He's waiting.
We've since been joined by Engineer Ben Onyenrionwu, who's also a structural engineer. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Before I come to you, let me just ask Mordecai something which has just skipped out of my head.
Okay. Sorry. I'm sure it will come back.
Okay, it will come back.
Yes. Mr. Ben, what are your thoughts? What could be the reasons, I'm sure there are a number of them, for the incident that we witnessed in Lagos on Monday?
All right, thank you. Just like the last speaker said, my heart goes out to those families who have lost loved ones in that incident. It's quite unfortunate, and it's preventable, like the other speaker said. Now, as a structural engineer, one can easily see what has gone wrong with the building, but investigation will bring out the actual truth. This building was still under construction when it gave way. So the situation is a peculiar case. People tend to allude that there are collapses all over the world and things like that, but there are slight differences. A building is usually designed to carry its own weight, number one, and then to carry the weight of those who are going to use it. So when a building is fully under construction and is put into use for a number of period of years and it comes down, it's a different thing from a building that collapses under construction. But it means that that building cannot even carry its own weight. So there's a peculiar situation, and something is fundamentally wrong.
Engineer, just a second. It's not the first time we're hearing of buildings coming down while still under construction. So you said earlier that it's easy for us to see what is wrong, but maybe I'm blind. I don't know.
You're a layman.
Okay. I'm a layman, so I don't really know. As you said, maybe investigations will bring further facts out. So the fact that it is under construction while it was still under construction when it happened is definitely troubling. So what are the things that we should have paid attention to, in your opinion?
Okay, thank you very much. A building that comes down under construction, right? There are majorly two things that could be wrong with that building. Just like I said,
I'm sure we'll have him back shortly. So you wanted to ask...
Okay. Mordecai, you spoke about the sizes of rods.
Good.
Now, who in this value chain that you spoke about, all those who come together to take part in the construction of such a building, who are those who go out to make the purchases for the construction? My question really is, so who are those who are going to buy the iron rods? Do they have a way of checking that the rods they're purchasing meets the spec for the building they're working on? Who are those who go out to buy the cement? Who are those who go out to buy the sand? You know, and how do they check the quality of those things that they're buying?
That's about the third point in the categories I actually made mention of, that I wanted the cultural, indigenous, contemporary challenges that we have with regards to this. That's talking about the demonic, manipulative tendency that has gained ascendancy in this country. How does this actually affect the question you just asked? I go to the market. As extensive as a building market is, all what we have within the vicinity. And everybody seems to be selling the same thing. I need to construct this house, get done with it, because I don't want inflation to subject that construction to an uncompleted or abandoned project. I'm in want of time. So the tendency is you go to A, B, up to H, and it's about the same thing. You start making compromises. Because except you want to now place orders, because if we have these factories working right here, like if the Ajaokuta steel industry that has been there even before I was giving birth to, has been up and doing, using our raw materials to produce these items for us, it's easier for you to specifically ask for your products, even if it's going to come at a bit of cost. But right now, everything we use is imported.
But Mordecai,
yeah.
You go to the market, you go from A to H, and you find that they're selling the same thing. Okay. But you are working as part of a team. Is the rest of the team made aware of your challenge, that you are going to compromise on the size of the iron rods you're going to use?
Now, it's still circumnavigating around the same point, because definitely there's an organogram, so you give feedbacks. And your boss, who happened to be the developer, it's furious because he is looking at his profit. People have already made payments. He needs to complete the house for them to take possession.
I know there are a number of developers in this country who import everything. And he's talking about the economic consideration. And there are those who buy properties off plan.
Sure.
Yeah.
There are those who buy properties while still in construction. First of all, there's so many things around this issue. Talking about the materials bit of it, who should be standardizing quality, especially because we are importing this very critical infrastructure?
Thank you very much for that question. We have a Standard Organization of Nigeria.
Sure.
And
That's where they come in.
Responsibility.
I understand the meaning of the word standard. And I know that Standards Organization of Nigeria is supposed to be doing that. Okay. So, but the question that I'm asking is, if the Standards Organization is not up and doing, so to speak, what does that suggest?
On another platform yesterday, social media, I sent a message and I was appealing to the professional organizations, the body that I call the end users of this material, that we need to be on our feet. We must ensure we put patriotism at the front. We must ensure we get things right so that most of us, not all of us, most of us will be all right. We can't allow all these things to linger on because it's affecting all of us. Now, when we notice all this, a structural engineer designed and said, okay, you should use 16 mm for this element or 20 mm. The company or the developer within that team, you must have your quality assurance and quality control engineers. Even when you ask someone to go and supply any product to your site, there are standard tests that must be carried out before you even use this material, and the result must be out. You go and test the tensile strength of the steel. The essence of this steel is because concrete, it's a material that is good in compression, but poor in tension. So the essence of structural engineering is to provide reinforcement to support the weakness part of concrete. Absolutely. So when you notice something is wrong, you need to raise an alarm within the team that we need to do something. Don't compromise. So during the test, you know the area of a 16 mm. If somebody is supplying something less, of course, there's going to be a catastrophic failure. Sure. Because 16 mm, 4 of it, you know the area. When you are bringing it 12 or 14, it will always give way. Sure. It's just a matter of time. Sure. So the professional bodies, Nigerian Society of Engineers, the architects, everybody, the stakeholders in the construction industry should be on their feet. Sure. They should be entering where they are selling this material, picketing people. Sure. You already have your 16 mm size. You have your caliper that you can use to measure it. Go there. Go and pick samples and let us have maybe the security agency that will back them up. We all need to be the foot soldiers for this industry.
Well, you see, what you just mentioned now, let me take this to Engineer Enyirion. I don't know if you agree with what Engineer Tijani just said. You know, okay, I think we don't have him back yet, but maybe I should ask you, Engineer Uzosike. When you talk about individuals who play in this industry and who have a measure of influence, so before we came on, Lara was talking about it. Do you know who I am, people? You know, they have a measure of influence in society, and they are the ones who are the bankrollers, so to speak, of these projects. And you raise such quality assurance or lack of it issues, and you risk losing your job. You risk losing that contract simply because you are raising the issue. Well, patriotism is good, you know, but patriotism, some people would say patriotism doesn't pay school fees, and the patriotism doesn't pay house rent, doesn't put food on the table and all those things. So it's now within the devil and the deep blue sea. How do we circumvent that?
Well,
I know I'm asking you a very difficult question.
No, it's not that difficult because I have come to realize that wealth made gradually is sustainable, but the one that is quickly gotten leads to disaster. It's a wise saying. So as a result of that, I have actually held myself or restrained myself from getting involved in things that I know will haunt me in future, because whatever we sow, we shall reap. It's a fundamental law of nature. Whatever one sows, we will reap. We can't fool the Almighty. Even if we like, we sleep in temples. I have been in situations where I almost compromised. And I'm telling you, there are Nigerians that are very honest, very determined, and the Almighty, I will be grateful to him for using such individuals to wipe me up to do the right thing. I remember as a child, less than 6-year-old, the cane I received from a war against indiscipline brigade still rings bell in my brain up till today. If I take sachet water, I will put the livet in my pocket until I see a waste bin. But behold, people who were older than me, old enough to know the impact of that very discipline. Most of them, in their SUVs, they will just finish eating, they wind down, fling it up to the distance. What impression are you leaving to successive generation? So there's a lot of misnomer. There's a big lacuna. But the tendency there is that we must be intentional and deliberate to make the best of a worse situation. Countries that we look at today as being successful are those who are determined to make the best of a worse situation.
Yeah. Engineer, you know, when I want TED Talk, I'll invite you. But for now, speak to the construction industry.
Okay. Sticking to the construction industry, you see, Mr. Ayo, I must tell you this. It's a very complex problem, admittedly. Why do I say this? My second point has to do with the government bottleneck. I am actually contravening the stipulations by virtue of the law. And because I'm a bigwig, beyond the governor of the state, by the time the governor, because he has people whom he has delegated to oversee certain issues, these people are doing their work. They come to my site. They want to actually clamp down construction. They want to do verifications. And they are seeing that I'm not complying to the dictates of the laws. By the time they start effecting a clampdown, what actually happens? The phone call is used for negative purposes. I'm not even going to call the governor. I'm going to call his godfather, his mother, his religious leader, the uncle. And by the time this one gets to call, hello, mommy, ejo, aburo
right now I'm protesting because you're speaking my language.
No, I'm sorry, my brother. I'm sorry, because it's the region I find myself in. You understand? So I have to actually say something in the language that the people understand.
Well, they are watching this program in Maiduguri right now.
Fine. So as a result, this person is appealing sentimentally on my behalf for doing the wrong thing. And it's coming from somebody whose offers the governor, the building regulatory director general, this thing cannot resist.
Engineer Ben Enyirio is back with us in this conversation. I think you have a question for him.
Yes, Mr. Enyirio. Judging from all the things we have read and seen regarding this building collapse, one thing that struck me was the project board, one, and then two, the fact that in June this year, I think it was, the work on that site had been stopped by the Lagos state government. And shortly after, work resumed again. First of all, is it standard practice that project boards carry just telephone numbers?
I had a bit of network issues, but I'm back now. It's not actually standard practice. A project board should contain the name and addresses of the consultants and contractors who are working on the project. Even that of the subcontractors should be there too. Their phone numbers should be clearly written with their name and addresses. With regards to the closure of the site by the Lagos State government, there could have been several reasons why they closed the site. They've not told us why they closed the site. A site could be closed because they flouted administrative regulations. A site could be closed, maybe there are some quality control issues. Did they close the site because there are some flouting of some administrative regulations, or did they close it because we have some quality issues? That needs to be determined.
And then staying with you, the jury is still out regarding how many floors were actually approved for that project. We hear 15 first, and then we hear the one that went down is actually 21. So did the state government approve for them to put a 21-story building on that site?
Well, that is still speculatory, because as of now, we don't know what the truth is. But if a lower number of floors were approved, and the developer went ahead and put more floors than was approved, that's a major shift. That's a major shift. Okay? Well, be that as it may, let's assume that actually 15 was approved, and the developer went as far as 21 floors. And we also know that the structural engineer wrote a letter that he has withdrawn from sites. That's also very important. I think from the letters we see going around on the internet, the structural engineer said he is withdrawing his services from the 5th floor or so. I am not too sure, on the 5th floor. So the investigation needs to understand and determine whether the structure was safe to the 5th floor and became unsafe after the 5th floor. Well, we need to determine the probability of everybody who's involved in the project, because whether we like it or not, the career and reputation of the structural engineer is at stake, and that needs to be cleared.
So, you know, 15 floors, 21 floors. If approval is given for 15 and a developer goes ahead to put 21 on the site, what should have happened?
The design should be revised. They would have revised the design and applied for a secondary approval. You can't get approval for 15 floors and then you go to 21 floors. That's a major flouting of building regulations, both technical and administrative. There's no excuse for that.
The interesting thing when you talk about these things, I'm just wondering, because these things really do happen in the city. Well, so far, I think we've heard the Lagos State government also come to flag a number of buildings, a significant number of buildings. I don't have the numbers yet, in the region of 100 or a little less than that, you know, because we have several buildings in the city where, I mean, it's just a bungalow. Before you know what is happening, they put a slab on it, and then another slab on it, and then I'm wondering who's going to scan the building to check the skeleton underground if it can carry, you know, the building that is being put up. But, you know, let's start this line of the conversation with you. 43 building collapses were recorded in 2019. That's just 2 years ago. And, of course, after every building collapse, we always have this what do we call it now, panel of inquiry to check what happened and make sure it doesn't happen again. Yet another one has happened. There are even rumors, I'm not very sure, that there was another, you know, building collapse in Lagos after, you know, the one
of Monday.
The one of Monday.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering, how hopeful are you that, I mean, this new panel, this panel investigating this collapse is going to make any significant dent in the issue?
I think I'll want to strongly appeal to the 5-man panel of inquiry to do a thorough work, at least to put this to an end. Over the years, there has not been consequences for all this. And we need to communicate this to the general public out there. when things like this happen, people want to read it in the dailies. They want it to be documented. They want to know that certain things happened and people were penalized. It's in the regulations that when something like this happens, this is the penalty. And part of it, that government might need to review some of this. I was going through some of the regulations yesterday night, and when you have 250,000, 500,000 fine as against 3 years imprisonment or 1 year imprisonment, we need, the essence of law is to caution people that don't do this. When you make something as more as like 25 years imprisonment, that will sink into people's hearts. I don't want to spend a quarter of my life behind bars. I so much believe these are people with high integrity, and the building itself is something that everybody should be talking about if everything, really going well.
Well, another leg to that, Dr. Tijani, is that several people, even here in this conversation, we have spoken about the collapsed building. As I said, between Alera and I before we come on air, it's 3 buildings. Only one of them came down. That must say something. Is it because the team changed that was working on it? Is it because the structures changed, materials changed, economic factors that Engineer Uzosike raised earlier? What are the things that you think? Because there are 3. If one of them was structurally deficient, shouldn't it affect the others?
Now, let's look at it from the situation. Building comes from the ground.
Sure.
And according to whom we call the father of soil mechanics, Carl von Terzaghi, said, soils, they are product of nature, no man-made. And the product of nature, they are complex.
Absolutely.
1 meter on this side, another meter on this side, the soil strata might be different. So you are building your house here, you are using this type of foundation. Your neighbor might be building another house, you might be using different type, because these soil are made from nature. You don't understand what is underneath unless you go deeper. That is where we have the geotechnical engineers, that they will be the first person to ascertain the nature of that soil. What type of building can you erect here? What type of foundation? And in a situation where you have a structural engineer that has done his own design with the applied load and the foundation recommended by the geotechnical engineer based on the soil strata, if you have any variation during construction, you are not changing the foundation. It's like you are walking your 2 legs. Your weight on that leg should be 25. Now you're having 50. Of course, before you know it, the leg will be stressed. That is the foundation. So when the foundation cannot uphold the load, it gives way. Again, building, like I said earlier, it's like a body part. You have the slab that is transmitting load down to the beam, to the column, down to the foundation and the underlying soil strata. If any part is faulty, and that is part of our design issue, that I will want to recommend that we start looking at having a robust structure so that when one part collapses, the other will now find a way to redistribute, they'll find another load part, so that even while one has failed, the building is still safe, so that we can prevent disproportionate
I understand we need to close now, but just last words, perhaps a kind of counsel to the panel. So let me begin with you very quickly, Dr. Tijani. What would be your recommendations? What are the things that you would suggest? I assume that they're professionals, just as you said. What are the things that you would suggest that the panel should be looking for in 10 seconds?
So that this does not happen again.
The human error, material. The recommendation should involve incentivizing the staff of the building control. I don't think they have enough capacity. The state government should engage consultants for the building control and other agencies. They can't do it alone, and we need to collaborate with the professional bodies.
Okay. Engineers of
Just like Volkswagen will say, when they built Santana, they said there's nothing more to add. He has just said it all. The government should empower those they employ.
Okay.
Our politicians should look beyond the 4 years, 8 years of the administration and know they are impacting on generations. So that whatever they are doing within the confines of their office is to ensure sustainability and to ensure the preservation of life and property.
Okay. Engineer Onyero, what will be your final words?
My final words with that. The panel doing the investigation should concentrate on the quality of the materials that were used for the construction. Because if you look at the way the excavator is easily removing the concrete rubbles, it shows that the material used in the first place is nothing to write home about.
Mr. Ben Onyero, who's a structural engineer, joined us via Zoom. We had engineers Mordecai Uzosike, a design technologist, and Ajibola Tijani, structural engineer, who were with us in our studio in Lagos. Thank you very much for joining us to look at this critical matter.
Thank you.
Sunrise will return in just a moment. Do stay with us.
Well, it's D-Day in Anambra State today, and of course, we've talked about this for how many months now? For as long as I can remember. And all of the build-up, all of the insecurity issues, all of the challenges, all of the unrest, all of the emergency call comes to this day. So let's go straight to Oka now and join Sheun Okinbaloye and the team. Well, Sheun, you look to me like you're looking very, very cool, calm and collected, no gun to your head. That's a good sign, isn't it?
We hope not. You might not be feeling the heat where you are right now. You are in the cool, in the cozy area of the studio. But yeah, it was a very clement weather we experienced few hours ago. But the sun is coming out now, and the sun is shining on us. In the light of the nation, Anambra State, where people of the state are coming out for this election. First and foremost, before we get talking with some of the people that will be telling us about what they've seen and how the assessment of the exercise, let me give you a very close detail of what is happening and what we can see. So this is what is happening. Basically, the process started at about 8:30 a.m. And so you can see this is what the ballot looks like, the ballot paper. This is what it looks like. You can see right here. 18 political parties. All right. And so this is what, again, what the voter register also looks like. You know. So the first thing you do, okay, so you have a successful, could you show that to the camera quickly? That is, Ayo, that is the new technology INEC has introduced to this exercise, the beavers that will capture and allow for accreditation. So that is what is going on right now. So let me also show you, these are some of the police officers that are designated here. But take a look. The ballot is sealed here. It will be removed after the exercise is over, hopefully at 2:30 p.m. So this is what happens at first. When any voter come here, they go straight to the voter register pasted on the wall. Then they come there where I took you first to the officials where they get accredited, and you can see you join the queue, and the queue is as much as you can see. So this queue is supposed to be populated until 2:30 p.m. when nobody can go in. And so when you've done all of that, this is the cubicle where you get to vote. The ballot paper, you take it, you put your thumb on the stamp here, and you get to vote and put it right here. So there's a voter that is going to do just that now. So take a look at him, and he's exercising his franchise. So when he does that, then he takes it straight that way, and he goes right there and casts his ballot. It looks so simple, isn't it? All right. So, great. So, Alaro and Ayo, there is another polling unit down over there. Okay, so you can see down over there, there is another polling unit. We have about 4 polling units right on this spot. And so people can choose and find where their polling unit is. Don't forget that about 81,000 of those polling units are going to be are not going to be active just yet. But let me bring in some of those who will give us their assessment of election observer. I have a friend here, and of course NLB, also a friend she is the convener of the election situation room with us today. Thank you so much, gentlemen and lady. Let me begin with you, Miss Obi. So far, you've gone around with your colleagues. What have you seen? What is your assessment so far?
I think it's quite encouraging. Everywhere is peaceful. Voters are turning out. I think earlier in the day, people were just gauging, but now we can see a lot of people trooping out. And, but we have gotten some reports from, different quarters. A few of the stations, there were reports that the beavers was not working. But it has been rectified because we are following up with reports. We're getting, escalating it to INEC, and some of them, we have gotten reports that they have been resolved. And so voting is continuing in those destinations. Some of the areas did not receive, earlier some of them, they reported that INEC was not yet on ground, but the security people are on ground, and a few others. But as we follow up, within the hour by hour, we find out that they are resolving the issues as well. And so we are receiving reports from different local governments.
Ezenwa, you've been here before the voting started. It does look like maybe people were not going to come out. But in the last 1 hour, has anything changed for you?
Well, I always say that we're uncharitable to ourselves. Uncharitable because the level of investment that civil society has put into Anambra elections, we should be able to see the value and the gain. And part of that value is that our expectation is that more and more people will continue to come out. It's early in the day. The time is still a bit stretched. We are hoping that those who went to their farms or something will quickly come out. And they are testing also. They are trying to find out, is he holding, is he not holding? But I think generally for me, I have a sense of fulfillment and gratitude to Anambra for heeding our call, listening to us, and defying all the odds that has been thrown on their way to making today a reality.
And because if you look at it in any ways, it's good to work with facts, with statistics. Anambra people have not done so well in terms of coming out to vote. The last time it was about 25% of voter turnout 4 years ago. But this time around, do you think, from what you have seen, for me, I was a bit skeptical. Although we've been here about 6:30 a.m. when we're setting up and all of that. But I mean, at about 8 o'clock, you just see people, a few handful of people, trickling in. But now it does look like we've seen a busier polling center. Right, and this is a very densely populated area. This is Amobia. In fact, this particular voting environment is Amobia one. It has about 10 polling units. But give me an understanding of what you make of the last few minutes of how people are coming in. You think that is encouraging so far?
I'm standing here and watching them, and I think I'm getting more excited. Because I'm just watching people trooping in. And it happened in the last few weeks. When you want to organize a meeting, a lot of people are gauging themselves. But you find out that their confidence is building. When those who go will tell others. And I'm just watching them trooping in here, and that's really encouraging. So we encourage those who are at home, get up and pick up your card and go to vote. Because once you have been accredited, you just go straight and vote. And I'm seeing it in a very fast, I think it's an improved system.
Well, interesting thing, Anna and Ezenwa, is the fact that earlier on, there are reports about the beavers not working. But as soon as we take the camera closer to the polling unit, what we see is successful. It's interesting that a few times that we have moved towards the accreditation point, it was successful. It went well. And you look at the minutes, it does look like, from your assessment, I'd like you to also tell me, the timing for how long it takes for you to get accredited and vote. Has that closed up? No, compared to the last election?
Yes, it's closed up a bit. It's closed up a bit. Like we said, everything that we have done and tried to do is to see how we can make election a little bit more competitive, friendlier, and accessible to a greater number of people. And collaborating, civil society collaborating with the Independent National Electoral Commission is helping to is paying off. But convener, my excitement really is about the women. At every point in time, I think we are not talking enough about that. The investment that women do for democracy is some of the things that we see in the polling unit. Across the polling centers that I've watched, I've seen enthusiasm, I've seen much more women. But you see, our work as civil society is to look at the process. We are looking at 3-4 people, 4 sets of actors in this process. INEC, the day set up on time. By the time I came to see you at about to 8 o'clock, we had seen in many places that setup had already taken place, and the officials and the way they have conducted themselves have discharged their responsibilities. We've seen the security agencies. We've not seen a lot of madness that we used to see in the past. I think we should encourage them to be more civil, more professional, and more friendly. You know, because that itself is what is going to inspire the confidence for people who are watching and looking out to come out. But we are here. I don't know what it is in the 21 local governments, and I hope that this is a representation of what we expect.
Part of what you're saying is if Theophilus, one of my cameraman, can actually go to the canopy over there. That is one of the measures that the voters have created here. They brought a canopy for the elderly, okay, so this is another very interesting. There is an elderly woman that is being helped. This is what we're talking about, isn't it? Exciting thing when you see the aged, and they said considerations to be given to this sort of people. Exciting moment when you see this sort of citizen, elderly citizen, who is coming to exercise our franchise. Very excited. And you see women, they're having their chat, they have their bottle of drink.
Those who will govern Anambra must not take this for granted.
Absolutely.
It is important that they don't take this investment for granted. And we must do all that because I mean, there is no show and support for democracy than the picture that we're seeing there.
Absolutely. It's the elderly. That woman should not be less than 75 or 80 years, and she's come this far with our walking stick and making sure that she exercises and franchise. What does that mean? How does that make you feel, Annie?
I think it makes if you take the vote of an elderly woman and you misuse it, you put a curse on yourself. Such an elderly woman, so dedicated and walking slowly and all that. But the INEC guideline, I think that has helped as well.
Absolutely.
The guideline to say if you are elderly, if you are pregnant, if you have a baby, if you are physically challenged, you know, you are given priority. I think that is excellent.
Absolutely.
We didn't have that in the past, which made people to queue and to move on. If you are pregnant, you know, I think those are the priorities. And I see excitement in the faces of the women. Though we are not having any woman governorship candidate, and I think that's appalling. Political parties need to do something, and women can actually form their own party and contest. And so our own is to encourage them. But I've been quite excited, you know, with the turnout, with the mode of operation in terms of go quickly, you do your voting, and then you move aside, and you know, all of those things are quite encouraging. We have reports in some quarters, just a few places that up till now, you know, just a few that, you know, INEC has not arrived. People are gathered, INEC has not arrived, you know, a little bit of tension, but the good thing here is that we are escalating it immediately. The situation room is escalating it, and we have the hotlines. Hotlines are on ground. All of the deployments that we have made, we are responding, and INEC is responding. We are shifting it, you know, to the right places and even to the rec and others. I think that's the collaboration that is happening. The meetings that INEC had before with the political parties, the civil society, the media, and then going over to the security, the couple of meetings that we had to get to understand, because we're watching, you know, earlier, you know, who are those carrying, you know, guns and all of those things. You find out that within the police environment, nobody is carrying guns. But outside, of course, they need to protect the environment as well. But we are, so far, we haven't seen violations yet.
There's one thing that, before I go back to Lagos, that I'd like you to look at. We've had conversations around the positioning of the cubicle or the voting cubicle. When the issue, it was an Ekiti election, when the issue of vote buying came up, and INEC was saying, oh, we're going to change the positioning of the cubicle. Ezenwa, do you see, can this comply with that kind of that development to forestall any kind of vote buying? Because what happened at the time was people take a picture of the ballot and they show it to someone who is standing by to pay them for it. But if you look at the positioning of the cubicle, what's your assessment?
Well, we've talked about the secrecy of the ballot, and it's important that people can vote without the feeling that somebody is watching them. I think this has captured that. It's helped to be able to, it's covered all the sides. So except the person is deliberately wanting to do that. But in terms of how the cubicles are constructed, the secrecy of the ballot seems to be guaranteed.
And the security is looking at them, watching them moving. Yeah. What we are seeing from here is that nobody is going close.
Yes.
No, nobody is going close to them. And so that should continue to be encouraged. Nobody follow them in all of the other polling stations that we have gone to. Nobody, unless you go and motivate somebody from somewhere, but not here. So we hope that INEC will maintain this transparency and accountability as well.
Okay. Ayo, Alero, you're watching from a distance not so far away from your screen. But well, this is so far we can tell you. You have independent observers who have given us an assessment of what the situation is. Ayo, that's what we're reporting. And of course, you know that we're live not only in Awka, we're live in every senatorial district of Anambra State.
Just before you go, from your assessment, what has the turnout been like?
Well, turnout is a very tricky thing because you see people coming in, but at the end of the day, you may not be able to measure until after. But it was a very discouraging one earlier. But it does look like, it seems people were watching their television, and they're watching and they're wondering, oh, look at what is happening on China's television. There's really no problem. People were talking about how they're voting. They see elderly, they see the young coming out, and it does look like people are now started coming out. In the last 1 hour or so, it started picking up, and it looks like maybe people waited to have breakfast before they come out to exercise that energy and the strength to be able to thumbprint on a ballot. I think they've garnered that and they're out. Alero.
Okay, all right then, Joe. Thank you.
Well, just one quick one, Shil. So does it then mean that all of the hula baloo about insecurity was just all noise?
Well, I mean, Ayo, the situation in relation to security in Anambra State is not a rumor. There are facts. People were attacked, things happened, incident happened, people were killed, and that created that kind of scare. I mean, when elections are just a few weeks away, and you see that sort of situation, it gave a lot of people scare about the situation. But it does look like the reactions of government, the reaction of security agencies, the words that were said by the president, the words that were given by, assurances given by the security commanders, gave some sort of assurances, renewed the hope in the process, and people are coming out, and it draws attention. There are about 35,000 police personnel, police alone, not talking about NSCDC, the military, FRST, SSS, and all of that. I mean, this place is loaded, pumped with different security agencies, and it's interesting. I don't know if you have about 30 seconds, Ayo. Let me just give you a sense again of what is happening before I toss back to you. So, if you look at it, these are police officers. 3 of them are allowed in this environment to monitor the exercise. And you can see, if you look at people who have brought their umbrellas just to shield themselves if the weather decides to be unfavorable. And so if you come with me just a moment, let me show you the other side of this, so you see what is happening here. So this is another polling unit. It's not as populated as you find on the other side. So look at it. People are there and doing their voting. And on that side is a few people buying and selling, people under the canopy that are brought for the community, and people are just relaxing. The elderly, you see them just relaxing and doing their thing. Ayo, Alaro, that is what we can see as of now, right here.
One thing that you have only just exposed again what I would call the election value chain, showing us all of the things that are possible and the things that happen. Having monitored elections for so many years, Sheon Okinbaloye, I'm almost certain that we should start to expect, or anytime soon, expect you to write a book on elections in Nigeria. Maybe that time will come. But for now, thank you very much for the wonderful work you're doing. And please keep the work going. We're still live with you from time to time, okay?
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Well, Dakpo Kubadejo has joined us this morning. He is Commissioner for Finance and Chief Economic Advisor in Ogun State. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
Well, the frontline conversation that we want to have with you is about the Ogun land amnesty offer. And you may want to tell us about that, because we also understand that, I mean, having announced a 1-month moratorium for residents and entrepreneurs who have properties on portions of land already acquired by the state government, I don't know how that is possible. Then this amnesty is like, why am I even doing your job for you? Speak to the issue.
All right, thank you very much for having me once again. Ogun State government, you know, particularly this current administration, really has put in place a significant land reforms initiative. And this land reforms initiative is actually to enable our people have a much more effective and efficient access to land resources, while also creating value from land as well. So this particular initiative is helping to fast track, you know, ultimately the issuance of certificates of occupancy, so that investors in land will be able to get a lot of value. Oftentimes, the challenge has always been that it takes a huge amount of time, long gestation period to get, you know, certificates of occupancy. And once you don't get a proper title to your land, then it becomes difficult to be able to create value from that particular land. That's number one. Number two, we've also had cases in the past of double allocations. You know, as Ogun State, where we have significant comparative and competitive advantages by virtue of our location being close to Lagos, it is critical that we manage one of the most important resource we have, which is land. You know, we've got almost about 17,600 square kilometers. And so giving people a platform to have easy access to land, you know, it's really the importance of this particular reform initiative. So what we've done essentially is to have what is called Ogun State Land Administration and Revenue Management System. And this system is looking at the entire value chain, from marketing, the allocation of land, the processing of title document, the issuance of certificate of occupancy, you know, in a nutshell, and giving people the opportunity, you know, to be able to, you know, apply for land in the comfort of your homes. Unlike in the past where, you know, you would have to come to the state government, you know, collect a physical form, complete the form, and you have a lot of intermediaries, you know, helping you to, in quote,
move it from table to table.
Exactly. So that's really what we have done.
Okay. Well, yeah. It's interesting that you talked about it. You say the C of O thing. Sometimes it looks like a certificate of life, because that's in the way it's important to people, because you have property. There is this sense that you are not sure you have the property, or you have a C of O. Is it also what is called governor's consent?
All right, so they're all titles. They're all titles to land, you know. You get certificate of occupancy directly from direct allocation from government. When it comes to governor's consent, or what is called deed of assignment, it's through secondary transactions, you know, where...
What is the difference?
Yes, so the difference is really around, if you get a direct allocation from government, then you get a certificate of occupancy.
Okay.
But the person that has that CFO could then decide to sell in a secondary market to a third party.
Yeah.
So that third party, you know, will no longer be issued a certificate of occupancy directly. He would have to, the original owner of the land will have to surrender that certificate of occupancy, but the new owner will then have a deed of assignment. It's all different classes of a title.
Just to a certain ownership.
You know, just to show that, you know, you are the real owner of that particular land. Yeah.
So the secondary purchaser gets a deed of assignment.
Yes.
But does he not also possess my certificate of occupancy, which the government gave to me when I bought the land originally?
Exactly. So as long as you surrender your ownership of that particular land, then you get a deed of assignment, which has to be consented to by the government.
So he can now process his own C of O?
If he chooses.
Okay.
If he so chooses, he can then, you know, process it, but he doesn't really need to, because the deed of assignment consented to by government already gives you title to that
ownership.
land.
Yes.
So if you have a deed of assignment,
yeah.
I'm just trying to be sure that my nursery brain is still... If you have a deed of assignment, you don't need a CFO. Is that what you're saying?
You technically don't need a CFO. Absolutely.
Technically?
Yes.
What if it gets to court? Because you know
No, because that deed of assignment is a deed. It's what gives you title to the land.
Okay.
As long as the government, all right, already also has consented to that particular transaction and has given you a consent on the deed of assignment, then you don't need additional title. You know, that would be an overkill.
Okay.
But
so I'm the original owner, and I sell it to Ayo. Ayo gets a deed of assignment. I have to give up my C of O.
To me, please.
Do I give it to him or return it to government?
No, you give it to him.
Exactly. I give it, but
I give you the money.
It bears my name.
He needs a title. But the deed of assignment now bears his name, that you've sold the land to Ayo.
Okay.
And that deed of assignment would need to be consented to by the government.
Okay.
Government would have to put a stamp on it that it now belongs to Ayo.
Okay, so can Ayo now decide, okay, deed of assignment, so can he now take my C of O and his deed to go and process a C of O?
You really don't need that additional process anymore. That deed of assignment is now signed by government.
It's like you have a PhD.
That is what
you're now going to do masters.
But coming back to the issue we're talking about, which is the program of that the Ogun State has actually put in place, the OLAMs. What OLAMs has done is very revolutionary. You know, in addition to the opportunity for you to buy land directly from government, anyone within the comfort of your homes, what is done is that we've also added some modules or additional features. One of the features we've added is what we call property registration program, and that's what you're referring to as the amnesty program. Government typically has, you know, they own all the land within the confines of the states. But in many cases, government also now does specific acquisitions in some areas, all right? Most of these acquisitions have been encroached by lots of people, right? So what we're doing in Ogun State now, and because we're really very close to Lagos, we have several incidences of that where a lot of government acquisitions have been encroached, you know, Magboro, Mowe, Ibafo, you know, in many other locations, Ota and all that. So what we're doing is that instead of having to go and do enforcement and actually destroy or demolish people's properties, we're saying, look, there's some economic value, even though they've not gone through the right channels, you know, in terms of purchase, in terms of proper purchase, in terms of planning permits and approvals, and also in terms of the proper titles of government that they needed to have received before they actually take possession of the land. So we're doing this property registration program, giving people land, you know, people that have encroached in the government land, the opportunity for them to come and regularize or ratify their
ownership.
titles. Again, because it's an amnesty program, what it means is that many people will want to take advantage of this. You know, in addition to the discount that we have given, we've also made it easy, right? By by enabling them to start the process through a platform, through the same OLAM's platform that we have created. All right? And we're also going to have so many sites, offices at different locations where people can also come and make inquiries and get assistance.
Now, I just want to, quickly find out. There seems to be, just to be clear, so there are people who buy from government directly, right? You're talking about land that is under the direct authority of the state. As you said, the state owns all the land. But then there are those who also say it's our ancestral land and we want to sell it to Alero and all of that. So do they also, and some of them didn't have a CFO, and so you purchase the land, you have to purchase the land from these families, and you also have to go process your own CFO yourself.
All right, so all of these are dealt with in the Land Use Act, all right? But let me just summarize it this way. There are issues of ancestral lands and all that kind of thing, but most state governments, in fact, virtually all, they have a process we call accommodation process or ratification process or regularization process, whereby such lands, they would need to come and go through those processes and then get a proper certificate of occupancy. Right, so those are the ways, because if you don't do that, the trust and the confidence with which people transact business with you on those categories of lands, would not be as you would have it without a certificate of occupancy.
Okay, permit me. I have purchased this land from the Makinde family. But all land in the state, I have paid the Makinde family for this piece of land, which ostensibly belongs to the state. Now I have to regularize so that I can get my CFO. Do I pay a second time?
Now, the Makinde family, all right, before, just as an example, before the land was sold to you in the first instance, all right, it must be a huge expanse of land, all right? And so what you typically would do is that they would have to go and do regularization, first of all, before they start selling to people. But if they don't do that, then it's buyers beware.
Oh dear.
It's buyers beware. So, but what we're saying again is that this particular PRP program now gives you or those people that fall into these categories, both buyers, to come and regularize, irrespective of where you bought it from.
Okay.
But as long as you don't have a proper title to that land, now you have an opportunity now with a property registration program.
Does it involve payment again?
Of course, it has to involve payment, but we've discounted the payment so significantly. What is most important is to look at the value of your property. What is it worth to you? What is it worth to you? How can you create value from these properties? How can you use the certificate of occupancy to now do further transactions, to get loans, to even be able to pass it on to your children, that you are sure that you are passing proper title to your children?
Well, you spoke earlier before we came on air about some property that the Ogun State government has, residential, commercial, and industrial. Take us through those.
All right, so what OLAMS is doing, this technology platform is doing, is that we have different categories of properties that are covered by OLAMS. Industrial land, commercial land, and residential lands. And there are two sources of landed properties that are uploaded onto OLAMS. You can either get it from the GIS, or we upload it onto the system, schemes. So you go onto OLAMS, olams.ogunstate.gov.ng, olams.ogunstate.gov.ng.
OLAMS is O-L-A-R-M-S.
O-L-A-R-M-S.
Yes.
olams.ogunstate.gov.ng. Once you go in there,
.ng.
there are different modules there. If it is land purchase you are interested in, land allocation, you click on that land allocation. There's a drop down that shows what type of land are you interested in. Is it industrial? Is it commercial? Is it residential? Okay. Assuming you pick residential, then residential would also have a drop-down of all the estates and schemes that we have uploaded that are available onto that particular platform. Currently, as we speak, we are starting with 2 estates. We call the Hillcrest Estate and the PMB Estate. Now, once you click on the estate, it shows you the geolocation of the estate. It shows you a picture of the estate. It shows you the layout of the estate. It shows you all the facilities that will be present in the estate. And then based on the layout, you pick precisely the plot you want. Once you pick the plot you want, then you complete your registration and application from the front end. You pay your registration or application fees, and then you pick the plot, and then it goes for back-end processing. And so once it goes for back-end processing, what we're saying essentially is that as long as you get the allocation, the final approval for the allocation, which comes within a week, right? And you make your payments. And all the payments are also online. You don't have to go outside of the system to make payment. You can make the payment online. And from the date you make the payment and the payments are confirmed to have been made, then you have an opportunity to get your certificate of occupancy within 30 days.
I see.
So that's really what this promises. Because for us, there's a nexus between land resources and ultimately economic empowerment and economic development. Yes, it's a significant means of revenue generation for the state, but ultimately, once there is an increased velocity in the volume of transactions on land, then you see huge economic empowerment all across. And people are now going to be able to use their title to generate further economic activities.
Okay. So has this taken off yet?
Yes, this is taking off.
So I can go to the
Olams is right there.
Oh, yeah. I'm actually on the Olams website right now. Well, I mean, just so I'm clear, one of the tabs that I see here is transaction tracking.
Yes.
So that means when I pay?
No, so that means that as soon as you get on that platform, you register. You can follow your progress. You can monitor where you are.
Follow my money.
Yeah, I mean, follow your money, follow your progress. You can follow where you are, right, in the transaction value chain. For instance, if you have chosen your plot and you've paid the registration fee, and you know, so if you go there a day after, for instance, that it's still being processed. Now, the moment that the final approval comes that you've been allocated this particular plot, that plot is removed from the map, from the layout, from what is available. Now, once you pay, then you start counting days up to the time you get your CFO. For me, there is no better opportunity that the state government can put in place, particularly when it's even been digitized. Because what we're doing with land transactions is ensuring that the process is efficient. And more importantly, also to achieve transparency and accountability. Oftentimes, a lot of transactions in land are shrouded in a lot of secrecy. You have a lot of intermediaries, that are not necessarily government officials, and they exploit people. I mean, you've heard cases of a lot of our people in diaspora, that transfers money to their families and friends in Nigeria, and they've not gotten anything for it. So this one and this particular platform is accessible all over the world. Even people in diaspora can access it and buy directly from government.
Have there been any cases where the land that people have encroached upon is one that government has earmarked for a particular purpose, and government requires that piece of land?
Okay, so that's actually...
Just a quick information, that's the website you're seeing on the screen right now.
Okay.
Yes.
So you can...
Yes, exactly.
I'm pretty sure you can watch, the scroll from...
you can take it up.
Yes, as we're seeing. Yes, go ahead.
So, yes, it's government typically acquires property, even though they own it, but they acquire it for specific purposes, and in most cases for public use. either there's an estate or for an industrial concern, you know. So normally there is a master plan, all right? From that master plan, different areas and locations are designated for different purposes. All right, so you have situations where people encroach into those areas.
Yeah.
If government still has a need for that land, of course, they would have to ask people to leave or enforce the evacuation from that encroached land.
Do you then allocate other pieces of land to them in other areas?
It depends. It depends. If there's a huge need, for instance, if the place is already almost fully occupied, then, you know, the cost of relocation then becomes an important consideration for government to say, you know, what is the social cost of relocating these people, their livelihoods, their families, their businesses? Then it becomes too onerous. And that's why the enforcement of master plans, or even, first of all, developing the master plan in the first case, and enforcing it is very, very critical.
Okay.
All right.
No, you talked about 3 categories, you know, and I would like you to speak to. You've talked about the residential, and I think we've spoken largely about the residential here now. Speak to us about the commercial acquisition and then industrial.
Yeah. Now, some of the schemes that the government have put in place, they're for different purposes, obviously, but ultimately leading to economic development. Ogun State being the leading industrial hub in this country, I mean, you know, by virtue of all of the companies are here, you know, and they're here not just because they like our face. It's because they're here because they're closer to the biggest market in Nigeria, all right? And so, and also we are the first also in the establishment of industrial estates. Agbara, for instance, is one of them, you know, and they've been there. Since that particular time, we've not had a dedicated industrial estate. So in this administration of Prince Dr. Dapo Abiodun MFR, we've recently just created 5 economic development clusters. In a nutshell, you can call them industrial estates, all right, where we have infrastructure, we have, you know, such as power, gas pipeline, broadband connectivity, roads,
water,
all right, and water, and even waste management. You know, so we have those. We are partnering with private sector investors to put in place this infrastructure in conjunction with government, and then we have different areas. For instance, if you take a look at one of those economic development clusters in Ikoyi, Jebu, where we've just actually constructed an expressway, a toll road there. We have the medical city there. We have the education city or knowledge city. We have the automobile city. We have SME cluster. You know, and the reason for all of this is to provide a location where there are shared facilities, all right, through provision of infrastructure, so that each of those
shared assets,
investors will not have to be replicating, because that's a problem with our cost competitiveness.
One of the things that's interesting for me, I mean, is about this is especially the industrial zones, because it's going to create economic activities that will create employment and solve some of the unemployment problems that we have. But you know, there is this special agro-allied, agro-industrial processing zones that the AFDB has been speaking with the federal government about, and Ogun State is one of those pilot states.
Absolutely.
You know, is this one of them? And because my understanding is that that one is going to be run by, I think, another, you know, organ of government entirely, and not the states directly.
All right, so it's essentially the same concept. It's all cluster strategy, you know, because our cost of doing business in Nigeria is very high, you know, because everybody is like his own local government. And so if you have these clusters where all this infrastructure is provided, then it drives down, because there's scale economies, you know, and so it drives down the cost of production or of doing business, essentially. The SAPZ you are talking about is actually the second, is part of the second cluster, where we have the Remo cluster. The Remo cluster itself is an aerotropolis, where we have about 5,000 hectares of land, and the anchor project in that cluster is the Agro Cargo Airport, which is currently being constructed, and by the grace of God,
Where?
It's at Elisha. Elisha Remo there at that junction. The construction is going on, and by the grace of God, before the end of next year, a functional airport will be commissioned by His Excellency. But next to that is the special agro-processing zone, which is, by its name, is an agro-processing zone, bringing the linkage between agricultural outputs to processing, and then obviously the value chain where the outputs of the SAPZ, if it's to be exported, is just next door.
Okay,
is it exported?
Is it also, my apologies, is it also on the OLAM's website, people can pick plots there as well?
No. The SAPZ is not yet on the OLAM's website. The SAPZ is funded by the African Development Bank. Ogun State is one of the first 6 states that have been selected. A dedicated land is allocated for this particular purpose.
Okay.
Ultimately, it's a PPP. It's going to be implemented or executed through a public-private partnership.
Okay.
Where government owns the land, and then we seek private sector investors, to provide the infrastructure and get all the processing companies and fast-moving consumer goods to come and site their businesses there, such that the output of one will serve as input into other and create a synergistic economies of scale.
Well, we have to go
drive down the cost.
Just before we run, you say that this project has taken off already. What has been the response of the people of Ogun State to OLAMS?
OLAMS has been so successful. It was launched just last week by His Excellency. Obviously, we're working with a consultant, and we've been on this. The conceptualization of it, the development of it, it's not a platform that is off the shelf. It was built by the consultant from scratch towards our own specific needs and requirements. The success is that in the last 1 week, over 1,500 people have registered on OLAMS. In fact, one of the estates that we put just 50 plots, just as a test case, all right, within a few days have all been applied for. The difference in this is that we've been able to build trust and confidence. Because what it means is that all our people in diaspora can log on to this and buy properties and get their direct CFO without any intermediary. And they are sure that the payments that they are making also go straight into government coffers.
Let's also hope that along the line, maybe, is it OLAMS or another platform will come and say, okay, you know what, you've bought the land, we'll build for you. Don't answer that one yet. We have to thank you very much, Dr. Dakpo Okubadejo, Commissioner for Finance and Chief Economic Advisor to the Governor of Ogun State. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
And for your
Thank you
thoughts
for having me.
Thank you for staying with us. Now, we have discussed this issue many times, and by we, I mean my partner and I. We have asked this question so many times in the past. Why is the cost of cooking gas rising? And we began from when it went from 3,000 to a meager 3,005. But if you use gas...
Forgetting that there was a time we didn't even know there was gas. We used those other things.
Firewood.
Oh, you have to say it like we're firewood.
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 Oh, sorry. As in cocoa.
Exactly,
All right. We were complaining when it went to 3,005 and 4,000. We didn't know that those were still good times. Those who have bought gas recently know that the 12.5 kg cylinder now sells for 10,000, 10,200. Wow. But guess what, guys? We have the people here today to answer all our questions. We have two representatives of the Nigerian Association of Liquefied Petroleum Gas Marketers, now GAM. We have the president himself, Mr. Olatubosun Oladapo. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, madam.
And we have the Executive Secretary, Mr. Basi Essien. Good morning.
Good morning.
We have been looking for you guys forever.
So let me
so
just...
happy that you are here.
Thank God. Why is gas costly?
Relax now.
No, no. I'm the one that pays for it. Why is gas costly?
Just relax. I hope we shouldn't be fighting Madam on this. She's not lying to you. Gas is extremely high, and that is why we are here.
Yes,
Why?
that's why I'm asking.
Why?
Well, there are a lot of factors that led to it. Before now, the gas price was quite reasonable. But don't let us forget that we are growing in population in Nigeria. And the source of gas we have is not growing in line with our population growth.
But we're flaring gas every day.
Yes, there's difference between production and availability. Availability we have is in the sea and in this ocean. But when in terms of processing it and producing it to make it available, the production capacity is rather low. So before now, there weren't good acceptance of usage of gas. And that was about 7, 8, 10 years ago. We were doing 550 metric tons per annum. But now, after a lot of campaign and awareness, both at our own level as a marketer and even government trying to sensitize people on the need to embrace use of cooking gas, a lot of Nigeria are moving massively into that. And our utilization level has gone up to about 1,250 metric tons.
And we don't have enough.
Even with that level, we've not gotten to the real level. We have capacity to do as much as 5,000 metric tons, 5 million metric tons per annum. If you compare us with other countries, like Algeria, like Morocco, Algeria does about 30 million metric tons. Morocco does more than that. Their population is not up to our own. And there are some other African countries. Even Cameroon, their capacity is far higher than our own. Still, they don't have our population. But we were late to get into usage of gas. And when we get there, we are moving at a very aggressive level. The usage is increasing.
If you recall, a few years ago, there was heavy campaign from government that people should switch to gas. It was at that time that these small cylinders came out with stoves on top to encourage people to switch to gas. So if we didn't have the capacity, why were we campaigning for people to switch to gas?
Yeah,
they have switched now, we can't cope.
Yeah, just like he has explained, as at that time, we actually had the capacity. Because, say, 2005 and 2007, our consumption was just barely 50,000 metric tons, and which were not even being taken up by everybody. Because at that time, we had about 3 storage facilities that were predominantly in Lagos that were serving all these areas. But with time, and like I said, with the campaign and the revenue put into the awareness, consumption grew. By 2020, end of 2020, we had consumed over 1 million metric tons. And then the storage facilities had grown from about 3 to about 16.
In the history of cooking gas, Mr. Essien, in the history of using gas, cooking gas in Nigeria, the price of cooking gas has never been this high. Now, the price of 12.5 kg, the most popular, is undulating around 10,000 naira per 12.5 kilogram of cooking gas. Now, you have told us the reason. I mean, earlier in the year it was just about 3,000 naira. Even before then, it was lower. So, what are the probable effects of this, consequences on consumers, on investors, and on the economy?
Yeah, on consumers first, it's discouraging because they can't afford to buy gas as they used to do. And we know in an average family, going by the minimum wage, if it's 12.5 kg cylinder costs for over 10,000 naira, and the way it's going, it may even cost much more than that, then the affordability would have been reduced drastically. Now the government, investors, stakeholders are putting so much money in raising the awareness to this level. And that effort that was achieved at that time is equally eroded. Now the consumers have no choice than go back to what we used to call the dirty cooking energy, firewood, kerosene, and charcoal, with attendant health and environmental implications. We know then, when they embraced cooking of gas, we kind of had this restful mind that in terms of medical care, families will not be expending so much, because we know what it means when they have to, the soot from cooking from firewood and the health effect as well as deforestation. All this may actually set in right now, because take for example, this morning, looking through the net, I was appalled by the numbers of companies advertising charcoal stove. At the end of the day, they still go back to the forest to cut the trees.
In spite of global warming and COP26.
Exactly. So which means that the achievement we recorded when we campaign and the government campaigned to move people from these dirty fuels to the cleaner ones, which is gas, it's virtually been eroded. Now, on the investor side, I told you that some years back, we had about 3 storage terminals in predominantly Lagos, and now they're up to 16. Out of these 16, many of 90% are private investments. Must have taken money from the banks to put up this edifice. The local sourcing of LPG, cooking gas, is just 40%. And the other balance, 60%, is imported. The vessel that produces the local content can only access Lagos waters and Port Harcourt. And other locations have to resort to importing their product. Right now, they cannot import, one, because of the price itself of the product is an international price index, foreign exchange. Then suddenly government wants to impose VAT and custom duties on imported gas. So as you speak right now, those private investors are not importing. Because
there's shortage now?
Yes, there's shortage now.
Scarcity.
There's shortage now. Like I said, we consume, okay, like if we go by December figure of over 1.2 million metric tons, and the local production counts for only 40%. The other 60 comes from abroad. So
but
right
somebody gave us a stat some time ago. Do you remember that only about, 10% of Nigerians cook with gas?
Long ago. That was long ago.
I think the issues, is also on the one hand is that campaign that you talked about. On the other hand is the capacity that was not ramped up to meet the aspirations. The aspirations, yes. Because they are, just as you mentioned now, it's also a climate change issue. Now you're yet to speak to the economy, the effects, the consequences of this increase on the economy.
Okay. First of all, I've talked about the health and the environmental implications on the economy. Number 2, the citizens can't even afford a good living. Right now, we've been bombarded with several economic hardships that it even takes the grace of God to survive. Okay. And food is the basic thing that should be in the house. And if you can't provide food on the table, what are we talking about?
Okay. Well, Mr. Oladapo, the issue is right there in our faces. And you both have agreed that there is a shortage of cooking gas in Nigeria. Is there anything that can be done? You say, for instance, that it's a consequence of the tax that government has imposed on importers of gas into the country. Is there anything, any intervention that your association can make, both to government or whatever, on that same matter?
Yes. Part of the intervention that our association can make is why we're here, just to create awareness and also to speak to the authority on what needed to be done. To arrest the situation, the presidency, the Minister of Petroleum Resources, the Minister of State, they have a lot of work to do. They've been doing well. The minister declared a decade of gas, and has been very supportive for the utilization and spread of gas. But all the gains of effort made, this recent happening want to take it aback. And the only thing we needed to do now is to make sure we first suspend the charges. The VAT should be suspended. Let me make it clear. No cover has been paid to government on this VAT. They only wrote to importers and the terminal owners that the product you are selling is subject to VAT, and it's subject way back 2019. So as that case, they have to be on an alert, and they have to factor the cost into their cost templates. That resulted into the hike in price. But it's not only that factor alone. The custom also are on their neck that they need to pay import duties. Agree it is business, and government need money to run the business. However, when you want to discourage importation or you want to put barrier there, you must have production that is sufficient locally. Why the gap is showing now is because we have deficiency in local production. If local production have been very sufficient, there's no need to go abroad and import. But because we could not produce enough. So what we want government to do now, to suspend those charges, now make a pronouncement on it, then let foreign exchange be accessible. Gas is essential product. Every homes in Nigeria needs it. And gas cannot be adulterated. Let there see a way they can give a concession as a palliative measure for them to have access forest so that the importer can bring it in. And when they do that, they should also monitor to avoid abuse, because that's another factor with Nigerians. I'm not here to plead that people should abuse the window. But when you give them the window, monitor it, ensure there's no abuse, and it must be used to bring in gas into the country. As a result of that, price will come down because there'll be more products.
Who is supposed to ensure this monitoring that you're talking about? Which agency of government has that responsibility?
Yeah, there are several agencies of government that is onto it. The former Department of Petroleum Resources there. The Ministry of, even the customs, there. So SON has to do with the standard. They are to assure the standard. Of course, they also have a role to play in terms of what they are bringing to the country.
Yes.
So don't bring gas that is substandard. There's an acceptable ratio in terms of chemical component of gas that is acceptable. Being a tropical country, so SON monitors that. The Federal Inland Revenue, which is in charge of VAT, also know that. And CBN themselves, when you give allocation to people, ensure that they actually use for that purpose, because that is the fear. But if you don't solve this problem, coming back to the impact, it's everybody that it affects. Jobs will lose jobs because plants are now closing down. Storage facilities that were built with millions of dollars are now dry. And at the end of the day, they will lose staff. And more importantly, the standard of living people is becoming poor. And another disturbing news is that even the youth in locality are now gathering together to attack on gas plant owners, believing that it's the gas plant owner that are increasing the price. And because they are just want to profiteering and they are making life difficult for them. When I got note of that, we need to have to intervene and meeting them as it's not a problem. And that is where we have to come on here, people to know. It's not the bottlers, it's not the gas plant owners that are actually, enjoying this one. We are not happy about it. Our business is also disturbed because the profitability is down and the patron has gone to near zero.
Mr. Nadapo, how much of our need, how much of the gas that we require in Nigeria is produced locally?
NLNG is the largest supplier for largest local supplier.
And accounts for what percentage?
And the capacity of NLNG is 450,000 metric tons. Out of that 450,000 metric tons, what actually comes to market is about 330, 350.
That's about a quarter of our requirements.
Per annum. That's about a quarter of our requirement. There are other sub-producers. We have Foredo, we have Kwale, but the aggregate of all gas produced in Nigeria is about 550 to 600. And the demand has gone to 1,250. And we have capacity to go to get to 5 million metric tons. We've not done 1/10 of what is doing in Morocco.
Who has this capacity?
Nigerians. The population is 240 million.
That is of consumption.
To consumption.
But what of production capacity?
That is the gap. We have the deposit abundantly, but to process it, exploration is capital intensive and it takes time. NNG is embarking on Trade 7 now. It will take them 5 years to complete. And that Trade 7 will only add 100,000 metric tons. If you had 100,000 to 450,000, that gives us how much? That's about 550,000.
We're not even halfway yet.
It's not up half, and the problem is still growing.
Okay, Mr. Essien, are you engaging with government at all about this? Because it's a national issue.
Exactly.
They have campaigned, we should move to gas. We are now gradually moving to gas, and they said gas is not available, so we're going to go back to the dirty fuel which they were campaigning against in the first place.
Yes, actually, we have seen what is on the horizon. And as we speak, we have actually consulted with key stakeholders, both in the storage itself and the government agencies and government itself. To be frank, we have it didn't start today. When we saw this some couple of years back, we've been dialoguing with the Office of the Vice President on the gas program, expansion program. We have been having discussions with even the Minister's Office, written several times, to let them know that something of this nature will be coming up very soon. And today it's here. So it's not as if we have not.
What kind of intervention, what kind of response have you received from the Office of the Vice President?
Yeah, they communicated that actually noted our concerns, and they are working towards doing something about it. Well, it's government, so we're still waiting for them. But actually, I know as we speak, they are aware of the plight, because it has been taken to almost every agency that should actually be concerned. So we're just waiting for them to respond. And the earlier they respond, the better.
Well, Mr. Ladako, so this is where we are now, and you have spoken about some consequences. Maybe we should expand these consequences. Mr. Essien spoke the other time about consequence to consumers, to investors, and to the economy as a whole. I'm particular about the consequence on the economy, because even now, I don't think you've talked about our consumption capacity. You've talked about the people that are consuming now, and those figures are rising. And both of you are clear, when you say food is the most important element in all of these things, and it's the process of creating the food that people will eat and everything. So what is the timeline that you would recommend that we should get this off of the ground, do something significant, decisive about this before so time or else?
Thank you. As a matter of urgency, immediately, government should suspend charges so that importation will be done. When imported gas come into the country, there will be product that will be available and the price will come down. One. Two, for good planning, because what we are suffering for is the planning that we lack before. We must plan ahead to encourage investors to come into exploration. Investor will not come now because the price is high. People could not afford it. Therefore, when they produce, the market is not here. It's either they produce here and go and sell in another country when they come, because the per capita income of Nigeria is low. So we need to stimulate the market, encourage them to buy. And when the price becomes affordable, they will buy. And the only way to do that is let there be importation. When there's importation now, price will come down. The middlemen that actually, living large on this scarcity now will be discouraged, because there will be products everywhere. And we should plan for proper exploration. 27 may not be sufficient for Nigeria, but private sector should come into exploration. Let other people that have gotten licenses, let them encourage them, let them explore, and we produce sufficiently. There are some other molecules that are produced in this country that are not being sold in this country. That's where government has to come in.
Such as?
Yes, without mentioning them, there are molecules, there are companies with the terms of engagement.
Okay.
Terms of engagement, but they produce here, but they sell abroad. So the government needs to look inward and encourage everybody to meet local demand. Of course, every contract has a specification. They must have some terms of engagement. But with due respect to that one, we must ensure that we produce, on the long run, sufficiently in Nigeria.
So right now...
I think to add to that too, because when the national gas policy came up, it was envisaged that by 2020, consumption should have risen up to 5 million metric tons. That's 2020. And by 2030, we should be hitting about 10 million metric tons. Well, the Minister of Petroleum came up with the decade of gas. And if this is the projections, then government should find incentives to give to investors or even tax holidays for them to actually come here and invest so that we can be able to meet these expected volumes.
Okay, thank you very much. Representatives of NALPGAM, which is the Nigerian Association of Liquefied Petroleum Gas Marketers. We had the president, Mr. Olatubosun Oladapo, and the executive secretary, Mr. Basi Essien, coming to talk to us about the reasons why the cost of gas has shot through the roof, which every Nigerian, of course, I'm sure is interested in. Thank you very much, gentlemen. That's the show for today. Like we say in broadcasting, it's a wrap.
It's a wrap.
Yes, so we'll bring you a fresh edition next week. I'm Alera Edu, wishing you all the best until then. And Ndi Anambra, don't forget, dust your PVCs, go out there and vote. You still have some time.
Oh, yes, you certainly do. I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend and a lovely day.
Bye.
Bye now.